All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Hitting the Field podcast. It's your host, Jeremy Brener, and today we are recapping and breaking down the free agency decisions made by the 16 NFC teams in the NFL. And joining me to break it all down, the host of Hitting the Field himself, Mr. Jaret Kappelman. Jaret, how's it going?
That's me. Oh, I'm
That is
chilling.
you.
I've been awake since 8 a.m. on the grind today, actually.
Yep. No days off during Corona.
No sleep.
Absolutely not. And joining me and Jaret is Mr. Robert Husby. Robert, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Ready to continue talking some football here.
Excellent. Yeah, so on our main show, which you can check on our YouTube channel, make sure you go and subscribe. We talked about the heavy hitters so far in free agency, the big signings, the bold predictions, but this podcast is designed to really dive deeper into each team and how they are going to be made better by these free agency acquisitions. So we're going to go through team by team. We're going to start in the NFC South with the team closest to Orlando that probably made the splashiest signing so far, with Tom Brady signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, in addition to adding Tom Brady, Jason Pierre-Paul was brought back, and Joe Haeg, interior lineman previously with the Indianapolis Colts, is also coming to Tampa to protect Tom Brady. So, guys, if you look at Tom Brady, that obviously dominates the offseason for the Bucs, but other than that, there wasn't too much that the Bucs did volume-wise to change their team, Robert.
No, like you said, the Pierre-Paul signing was a re-signing, which I thought was actually a great re-sign. He was really good last year. But other than Brady, they brought in Joe Haeg, and they just didn't do a whole lot. I don't think they necessarily need to. I think they got a really good offense now with Brady in there, adding to Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, Mike Evans. I think they're in a nice position, and they're going to be an interesting team in that division. That's a division that's really been dominated by New Orleans. It's going to be. I still think it's New Orleans' division, but Tampa's going to be pushing hard for a playoff spot this season.
Yeah, Jaret. So do you think that Tampa might have spent? This is a team that was 7-9 this past season. So a couple steps they need to take a couple steps in the right direction.
I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but I think they might have the best improved from win-loss record from the previous year.
Really?
And that's just to go. Okay, here are my numbers here. They turned the ball over 41 times and still went 7-9. They led the NFL in giveaways, and you're still 7-9. And they had a couple games down the stretch, like early in the season, and where they were losing one possession games. So it's not like they lost like close games. They lost a one possession game to the Titans, the Seahawks, the Texans, and the Falcons. Like that's 4 games that can flip if you're not turning the ball over 3 times a game. So that's something with Tom Brady. What do you have? 9 picks last year, I think. So that's something. You're going a third of the picks that Winston throws, and I don't know how you can say that the Bucs shouldn't be an automatic contender in the NFC. I know the NFC's stacked, to begin with, but the Bucs should definitely be on everyone's radar just because you have a quarterback that is smart with the football.
Yeah, but the thing that I think is overlooked about this Tampa team is the fact that their defense is not very good.
Well, they gave up the least amount of rushing yards last year, but then again, how often were they on the field?
The secondary is where they need improvement.
Yeah, no, their secondary got absolutely torched last year. They gave up. They were top 3 in passing yards given up last season. I just think the fact that they were on the field so much might kind of, you play in Florida, the heat, it gets to you, and you're on the field a lot. I mean, did they get much of a break? Winston get the ball for 5 plays and then turn it right back over? I mean, I'm going to cut them a break just by how many turnovers the Buccaneers had. I think the first few weeks will be a good storyteller for how the Bucs season is going to go.
So, Robert, there's still a lot of time for free agency. And a lot of free agents that have yet to be signed. Is there someone specific that you would like to see Tampa go after and possibly add to really make a difference on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think everybody is still wondering where Jadeveon Clowney's going to go. I don't necessarily know if the Buccaneers, want to spend that much on a guy like him.
Yeah. Well, the Bucs, they spent a lot of money on Brady.
Yeah.
They spent the money to re-up on JPP's contract. They franchise tag Shaq Barrett. So they've made some moves and they've spent some money already. They had to let Carl Nassib walk. Bo Allen had to walk. So I mean, is there more of a need to upgrade the front seven or the secondary?
Yeah. I mean, they don't really have like any super top defensive ends either. So I mean, getting Jadeveon Clowney is probably an upgrade on who they got already. But yeah, I mean, definitely it's either that or the secondary. I mean, it just depends on what they look at as a bigger need. And if you look on paper, it's definitely the secondary. But there's not a lot of super great options out there left. I mean, you got like Xavier Rhodes and all that, but just the way he looked with Minnesota his last couple seasons, there's just so many question marks there that you're not going to put too much faith in a guy like that.
Jared, is there someone that you think the Bucs could go after this initial spending?
I mean, I don't know if the re-signing the Dominican Sue's out the window yet. I mean, that's an option.
That's also that's a big loss if they can't retain him.
Yeah, because they gave up 74 rushing yards a game last year. Like, I mean, not saying that teams were running on them or whatever, but they still got torched through the air. But I mean, the obvious choice is Jadeveon Clowney, but as Robert was saying, I don't see the Bucs going out and spending that much after they just gave Brady like the super max, basically. Realistically, I think you just got to try to keep Sue. Maybe make a trade for someone. I mean, I'm not saying possibility, but like that Von Miller was unhappy in Denver. I mean, you need someone. I think you need an edge rusher. I really think that's what they need. Just keep your run defense well. If you have a good run defense and you're going to pass, if they're going to pass, it's easier to game plan if they're going to pass, 60, 70% of the downs.
Yeah. Now, I think it's possible that they're looking for an edge rusher in the draft because I think Clavon Chasen has been linked to them. AJ Epinesa could certainly be up the pick there at 16 when they draft. There's a lot of options for Tampa, and I think that is what they wanted to get going into this offseason. They wanted options, and I think they've gotten that. And given that Tom Brady is now on their side, it kind of it changes things, and it changes the outlook. People look at the Buccaneers a lot differently now than they did a week ago, and I think now that now that they've made the push for Brady, they say, we want to win right now. Because you're not getting Tom Brady just to say, oh, we're going to use him as our bridge quarterback. They're getting Tom Brady because they want to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. So that is their
I wonder, my question here is going to be, how much say does Tom Brady have? Because wasn't there saying that he wanted to go to a team where he had some sort of roster control?
I think that's did Tom Brady have roster control in New England?
Absolutely not. Antonio Brown would have never been cut if he had roster control.
That is true.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some truth in that. So maybe Tom Brady does have a bit of pull when it comes to signings in things of that nature. But
I mean, people want to play with Tom Brady.
exactly, and that was another thing too. Is you're not only bringing in Tom Brady, you're bringing in Tom Brady and his groupies. So, I mean, there's a chance that this fallout could be much more substantial than just Tom Brady. I think they need a corner. They need a veteran corner. That's the thing. I think they have the veterans on the defensive line, like JPP, like Shaq Barrett, that can, they have the leaders that are established in that front seven. They need that same thing in the secondary, which is why I think Ronald Darby makes a lot of sense for them. He's a corner. I'm not saying he's the best corner, but he's a veteran corner that can be serviceable, and I think that's what they need right now. They can go and get somebody in the draft, but at least have someone that can match with because in case a young guy just simply doesn't live up to its expectations from the draft, you at least have a fallback plan, and a decent fallback plan, not a bad one. And I think
the only issue with Darby is he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and that's part of it, and that's why you then use a guy. It kind of forces you to go and get one in the draft because you know that your contingency plan with your veterans is not sustainable for very long. So you bring in Ronald Darby for a 1-year contract, and you see how healthy he can be. Because I think if he's healthy, he's a pretty decent corner. Definitely a corner that's worthy of a starting job in the NFL. So I think that's a low risk, high reward signing that if Tampa can get it, could push them to that next level.
I think Talib might end up back.
It's very possible. Yeah, Aqib Talib, that makes a lot of sense. Aqib Talib, because former Patriot, former Buck,
former Buccaneer,
and
former teammate of Tom Brady.
Recently played in Miami, so he's familiar with the area. Recently familiar with the area. I think that makes a lot of sense. But would you count on Aqib Talib to be a starting corner right now?
Yeah, you have to. You have to put faith in your veteran players at some point. I don't know what Robert would think of this because he's seen Talib on the Rams, but Talib's a good player. He's just got an attitude and has this ego to himself. And between him and Marcus Peters on the same team, I don't think that was ever going to work out.
But where was his best play?
That was a time bomb waiting to happen.
I think his best play after he left Tampa was in New England with Tom Brady.
Yeah, but he ring chased. He got the ring and left.
That's true, but
everyone does that. Revis did the same thing.
That's true. Maybe bring Darrelle Revis out of retirement, come back to the Bucks.
Revis needs to stay on Revis Island. No Corona over there.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll give let's grade the Bucks thus far in free agency. I have to imagine
A plus.
This is a good grade. A plus.
You got the best quarterback of all time. A plus.
A plus from Jarrett. Robert, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'll say A- just to be a little different. But yeah, getting Pierre-Paul back, obviously contingent still on getting Ndamukong Suh back or whatever else moves they make. But yeah, getting Brady just is such a big improvement on Jameis, even at his age. I mean, it's a match made in heaven.
I'm going to give them an A- as well because I think they've done a lot to prove that, hey, we are contenders, but they have done zero to little to try and upgrade that defense, which is what they truly need.
I think Brady's one with worse defenses.
I mean, but he's always had a good defense in Tampa or in New England. In New England.
Well, I mean, last year was the best defense he had statistically in his career, and look at what.
But the offense wasn't up to par.
And that offensive line was god awful.
Yeah. Now but also how they bring in Joe Haig. How certain are we that this offensive line is going to be able to protect Tom Brady?
You better hope so. He's $50 million and 40-something years old. You better hope that line can protect him.
And that's why you got Joe Haig.
I don't know. I feel like Tom Brady's going to bring a work ethic to Tampa that hasn't been there in a while. Tom Brady's just got the winning mentality. Obviously, he can't block for himself, but I feel like people in Tampa will be more motivated, if that makes sense. Do you really want to block for Jameis Winston? Or do you really want to block for Tom Brady?
Well, I mean, Jameis Winston last year led the league in yards
Yeah, he also led the league in
and
interceptions.
led the league in interceptions. But
Yeah,
also,
I mean-
how many of those interceptions? I mean, most of them were just poor decision making. But also, how many of those interceptions came from poor decision making because he had little time to throw in the pocket?
Oh, I thought you were going to say because he needed LASIK. I don't know. Again, I don't sit and watch Jameis Winston tape that often, but that is, I'm sure, half of it. But I never thought Winston was that great of a quarterback, to win.
I think last year proved that Tom Brady is not someone who can just, at the snap of a finger, change everything for the better like he used to be. And in Tampa, Tampa was a 7-9 team last year. It's not all of a sudden that they are going to get better because they have one player. I just don't see it.
I don't know.
Look, I don't disagree.
The Chiefs were magically good, better with Mahomes.
Okay, but
they were average with Alex Smith. Then they were great.
But they were a playoff team with Alex Smith. They went from a playoff team that wasn't a contender to a playoff team that was a contender, and then they went to a Super Bowl. But you're asking Tom Brady to take a 7-9 team into a Super Bowl contender, and it doesn't just work like that anymore.
Fair enough.
I don't see it. I mean, there are some very rare instances where seasons are, magically changed by the touch of one or two players.
The thing you can relate it to most is just 2017 when Rodgers broke his collarbone, and then the next year he gets hurt again, and then this year he comes back and they're a playoff team again.
Exactly.
Or not saying they went 13-3 this year after missing the playoffs the last 2 years because Rodgers played 6 games.
Yeah, but also Tom Brady is not going to be able to throw the ball as much as Jameis Winston was able to throw the ball last year. They didn't have a running back. The running backs were inconsistent at best, and they ran a committee. Peyton Barber was the lead of that committee, no longer there, has not been signed yet, but it's looking more like he's not going to be with the Bucs in 2020. Todd Gurley was on their radar, but do you think that running back is a position that the Bucs should go through in the draft or in free agency?
I would say probably free agency, just because there's other needs to address before you address your running back situation through the draft.
Should Devontae Freeman be on his way to his former division rival?
One, I would. Yeah, if you can get him cheaper, I would say that's a decent fit. If you can get him on the cheap, just to get that 1 year prove it deal. Yeah, that's actually a decent fit, I would think.
Carlos Hyde also.
Where is Cam Akers expected to go in the draft? Is he still?
I think Cam Akers makes a lot of sense for. Cam Akers could go anywhere between the second round to the fourth round, I think.
I won't say you want to invest a pick in that.
Yeah, the running back depth is tremendous this year, and I think regardless, the Bucs will use one of their picks on a running back. I think that's given. Whether they use it in round one to go and get a headliner like a DeAndre Swift, like a Jonathan Taylor, or like a J.K. Dobbins, or if they get a depth guy in the mid rounds like a Cam Akers, a Zach Moss. Those guys, I think you're going to need a veteran to at least kind of be there just in case, a mentor, if you will. And getting Devontae Freeman and Cam Akers, both Florida State guys, in Florida, I think that makes a ton of sense.
I just think they need to find what James White was to New England. They need to find that in Tampa.
Yeah.
Because James White was the backbone of Tom Brady. If that makes sense.
Yeah, he was.
James White is Mr. Reliable.
Yeah.
And that was someone you could always trust. Even last season, you could tell he didn't trust Edelman.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding that player, and if it's in Devontae Freeman or in the draft or someone else, then we'll see. LaShawn McCoy could be an option,
possibly. Yeah. So let's shift gears here. We'll move from Tampa to probably their biggest competition in the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints spent a lot of their offseason retaining some key pieces. Drew Brees, obviously one of them, and Andrus Peat, one of his interior linemen. But they also went out and they did some spending. They got Emmanuel Sanders for 2 years, $16 million, and they brought back Malcolm Jenkins. So, Jarrett, you're very familiar with Malcolm Jenkins.
I talked about it earlier. I mean, there's something with Malcolm that you'll always get leadership out of him, no matter what. That was something that he always brought to the table, no matter how bad things got. He rallied the team together. He's a great player. He has fallen off a bit, just age, and that happens. But I'm more surprised about the Emmanuel Sanders signing. I feel like that was just unnecessary. Just plain and simple.
Because look, Emmanuel Sanders. So they have, they obviously have Michael
the best
Thomas,
wide receiver in the game right now.
The best wide receiver in the game. You have Ted Ginn, Traquan Smith, UCF. Did they really need to go? Alvin Kamara, yeah. Robert, did they really need to spend that money to get Emmanuel Sanders as a solid number 2?
No, but I think also that they just want some insurance there at wide receiver. I think they're kind of covering for the fact that they don't really know if Drew Brees still has it anymore. But, so I think they're just trying to load up on talent on wide receiver just to give Brees as many targets as he can get. And, if he can do something with them, he can do something with them. But, I think it's just to cover the age gap with Drew Brees.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Jarrett.
I don't like age gap. Like, if they were worried about Drew Brees not having it, they wouldn't have given him the deal he got, and they would have just kept Teddy Bridgewater. They have 100% faith in him. That's no question there. Because if there's any doubt, Teddy Bridgewater would be the quarterback right now, and Drew Brees would be pulling the Phil Rivers, Tom Brady train and being on a different team. I don't think his belief in his ability. I just think they're thinking, hey, we can have Sanders just run a go route down the field, and Thompson's going to be open for a 15-yard slant. Like, I just think that's the mentality of it. Just get a distraction route. I mean, I still don't think Thomas is going to lose any production. I think Sanders' production is going to go down heavily because I think there's actually going to be a lot of focus.
But can you really expect Michael Thomas to match what he did last season?
It depends. It depends.
Because what he did last season, it's arguable. It's arguable that what he did last season was something that no wide receiver had ever done before. So I think it's a little bit naive to think that he can match that. I think he's physically capable, but when you have a really good season, you tend to get game planned a little bit more. And I think considering how, I'm pretty sure, Bruce Arians probably in the lab talking about how he can find ways to, clamp Michael Thomas. And, Matt Rule's probably doing the same thing in Carolina. And Dan Quinn's probably doing the same thing in Atlanta because they've got nothing better to do than watch film.
Yeah, the whole thing with Michael Thomas is he just goes up and gets the ball. What do you have? 2 drops last year?
Something like that.
It was some crazy stat. And
but I will
185 targets.
Yeah. So maybe getting Emmanuel Sanders is a good thing because it kind of, forces you to put some attention, to not take so much attention off of Michael Thomas, because if you put too much attention on Michael Thomas, you're leaving Emmanuel Sanders,
but
who could be a wide receiver 1.
I don't think they had to get Emmanuel Sanders. I feel like they could have saved money and gone and paid $6 million for $4 or $5 million for some scrub like Aguilar. I don't know. Just
or they could go through the draft.
They didn't need Sanders. They could have saved money.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Let me bring it back to Malcolm Jenkins here, because they brought back Malcolm Jenkins, but Von Bell, who was a starting safety for them last year, is unsigned currently. So is Malcolm Jenkins coming in? Does that mean Von Bell is on his way out?
I would assume so.
Yeah, I would think if he's not signed by now, and Jenkins has taken his spot, I would assume they're not re-signing him.
What would be a good place for Von Bell? a team
Philly.
that needs a safety. Philly, even with
Yep. Just do
signing,
good old switcheroo.
I mean, even
Slay's
with
playing corner.
yeah, but what about Will Parks?
Oh, true. I don't know. I forgot we signed him actually.
We'll get to Philly a little later on in the show, but yeah, Von Bell's probably one of the better free agents out there currently. And I mean, if you look at teams that lost safeties, I think you could look at maybe the Rams. Don't have Eric Weddle anymore. I think, and they're losing Nickel Roby-Coleman. You could look at Seattle, a team that could possibly make an upgrade in the secondary once again. I think
Was Jimmy Smith playing corner or
Jimmy Smith
safety
is playing
last year?
corner.
Okay. I was thinking the Ravens could use.
I mean, the Ravens,
help.
yeah, because they're losing Tony Jefferson. I think
That's true.
that I think would make the Ravens just as scary as they once were. So, yeah, I think Von Bell. I'm surprised he hasn't been signed yet. I thought he'd been signed by now, but I'm sure he'll sign somewhere in the next few days.
Maybe the next 10 minutes he'll sign.
Maybe, yeah, and we all have our phones on standby just in case this happens.
I did just get an announcement that the Olympics have been postponed
yeah,
till further notice.
The Olympics
That's
have been
sad.
postponed indefinitely.
That
So,
sucks.
unfortunate news. Well, I'll probably cover that at some point on Hitting the Field. But, so let's grade the Saints here. What are you guys feeling about the Saints? They gain Malcolm Jenkins. They re-up on Drew Brees. They lose Teddy Bridgewater, likely losing Von Bell. What are you guys feeling for the Saints?
I'm going
Robert,
B minus.
A B minus from Jaret. I'll go with the B plus because I really like the Malcolm Jenkins signing. I think the Andrews Pete signing was necessary. I think the Drew Brees signing was necessary. I think the Emmanuel Sanders signing, although a little pricey, $8 million a year, I think it is worth it. They do lose Von Bell, but they gain Malcolm Jenkins, which is either a comparable swap or even possibly an upgrade. So
Brees was overpaid and Sanders was unnecessary.
Fair, but I mean, look, $25 million for Drew Brees or $20 million a year for Teddy Bridgewater. What would you have?
Oh, it depends on how many years. What am I signing? Am I signing Bridgewater for a 7-year deal?
We can look at what the Carolina Panthers signed Teddy Bridgewater to, which is where we're
63?
going next. The Panthers, their offseason is highlighted by the Teddy Bridgewater signing, 3 years, $60 million. You don't bring someone in for $20 million a year to be a backup, so it probably means Cam Newton's on his way out the door. They made some, low-grade signings as well. Seth DeVal, former Jags tight end, on his way to Carolina. Seth Roberts, former Raiders and Ravens wide receiver, also on his way to Carolina. They also get Stephen Weatherly from Minnesota, defensive lineman, because they lost multiple defensive linemen. They lost Mario Addison to the Bills, Gerald McCoy to the Cowboys, Vernon Butler to the Bills as well. They lost a lot of pieces, guys, but they do get Teddy Bridgewater, a sign that they are looking to move in a different direction at quarterback.
Yeah, Panthers are interesting because the whole behind the scenes thing is what bothers me. The front office, you have, I talked about earlier, the whole mutual trade, but apparently it wasn't mutual. And then Greg Olson says, "Oh, it sounds like what happened to me." So it's like something sketchy. When you bring in a new coach, you're going to expect people to bring in who they want and who they want to work with, but it's just weird how things are going down there. I like the Teddy Bridgewater signing.
And we have some
really
breaking news, Jaret, and ironically, it is about the Panthers. They've traded a quarterback.
Did they trade Cam Newton?
It's not Cam Newton. It's Kyle Allen.
Yeah.
And he's going to Washington.
Really?
So Ron Rivera gets his quarterback from Carolina. It's not Cam Newton. It is Kyle Allen, who started majority of the games for the Panthers this season, and they're sending a 5th-round pick back. So Carolina, they bring in they're going to have a whole new quarterback room next season with Teddy Bridgewater, with XFL icon PJ Walker, and they send out Kyle Allen, likely going to send out Cam Newton as well. So what do you guys think about that trade?
Dwayne Haskins is riding the pine next year.
Yep.
I mean, right? It's Kyle Allen's job until he screws up. Safe to say, I think.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. You look at what just transpired. Tom Pelissero from NFL.com with that report. So I'm curious as to look. This obviously you were alluding to a little bit, Jaret, about how this is a sign of of the times. It's a new regime in Carolina. They're looking to really move around some pieces, and I think that what you're seeing right now is an absolute just total haul of the team.
I still don't get how Matt Rule got that job.
He got the job because he had one good year at Baylor, and
I know I'm still.
And he's a quarterbacks guy, and also the offensive coordinator he brought in was in the quarterback room in New Orleans last year, which I think is a big reason why Teddy Bridgewater flocked his way over to Carolina. Robert, how did you like that Teddy Bridgewater signing?
It's decent. I mean, Bridgewater's a good quarterback. My thing with him is they're banking off of like half a season from the time he filled in for Drew Brees last year. I still think he's got the talent. He's made an incredible comeback from an injury that almost lost him his career. So it's a great story for Teddy to come back and get like a big deal like that. But I just don't know what he's going to do with Carolina. Like, Carolina's one of those teams that, Teddy can be as talented as he can be, but that offensive line is just not going to hold up, and he's going to really have to work extra hard if he wants to get them anywhere near competing, which I just don't see this team competing for anything other than Trevor Lawrence. It's a poorly built team. They lost a ton of players. It's really bad waters over in Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they've shown signs of moving in a new direction, but I think they are losing so many pieces, especially on that defense. Mario Addison's gone. Gerald McCoy, gone. Vernon Butler, gone. James Bradbury, number one corner, gone. Bruce Irvin, gone. They have so many holes to fill in that defense, and Stephen Weatherly can't fill all those holes. I'm expecting them to go have a very defensive-heavy draft because they've had a very offensive-minded offseason with Bridgewater, Seth Roberts. I don't think their needs lie in the offense. I think they're going to go very defensive-heavy for this draft. And in my opinion, I think that is where to go in free agency. I think that you look for offensive players because I think offensive players have a harder time adjusting to the NFL game than defensive players do. I just think that, to me, that's a very I don't know. To me, that's just how I think things go. They also lost Luke Kuechly, and that's something we haven't mentioned yet. So they do somewhat replace him with Tahir Whitehead, former Raiders linebacker. But, I mean, for me, Carolina, they know they're not going to be competing this year, and they are kind of just filling in the pieces so that they can compete in 2 or 3 years.
Really? I think they could have like one of those like Buffalo kind of years where like you think you're not going to compete, but then you find yourself in a wild card spot, like fighting for one towards the end of the season. I think they're really talented. They have arguably the best running back in the NFL. You add Teddy Bridgewater, who was 5-0 as a starter last year, and if they can go out and get another receiver and just get one more piece on defense, they could be looking at like an 9-8 season. Are we doing the 17 this season? I'm still confused.
No, it's still 16 this season. But
okay,
I mean, cool. You lose Luke Kuechly, you lose Mario Addison. That's like two of your best front seven guys. Gerald McCoy is gone. They need more than just one piece on defense. I think they're fine on offense. I don't think the offense is the issue, but they're going to have trouble, with points. And Matt Rule is an offensive-minded coach. I think that they are going to be focusing more on the offense, and their MO is probably going to be, let's score 35 points and good luck trying to get us. I think there's going to be some games this year where Carolina scores, 28, 30 points and loses because they simply that is their MO. Their MO is to score as many points as they can. I don't think they're going to have an issue with that. I think that Teddy Bridgewater was the right guy to get in this free agency class. I think out of all the guys they were in contention for, I think they got the best one. I think he's better than Jameis. I think he's better than Foles. I think he's better than Cam Newton right now. And we bring that up. Would you rather have Cam Newton for 1 year, Drew Brees for 2, or would you rather have Teddy Bridgewater for 3? I mean, I think to me, I'd much rather have Teddy Bridgewater than either of those two.
I mean, I think anyone would rather
because
have
Teddy
Bridgewater
Bridgewater
for
also
3.
can get you another contract. That's another thing, and I think Teddy Bridgewater has a little bit more staying power. Drew Brees is obviously in the twilight of his career. This is probably his final contract. And Cam Newton, I think Cam Newton. I'd be surprised if Cam Newton started 16 games in the rest of his career. Like, not just in one season. I think 16 career games.
What about
I don't think
17?
he is that much yet.
Who's going to be the first player to play 17?
Well, if he's not starting 16 games, he's not starting 17 games either. I think that Cam Newton is at this point in his career, and it's unfortunate. And this is not necessarily his fault, and this is not necessarily a matter of his talent. But I feel like if he was talented enough, he would have gone. But he would have been the one that the Bears would have traded for, not Nick Foles. I think that, to me, that's just how people see the quarterbacks right now. And, I feel like the Chargers would have traded for him and not stuck with Tyrod Taylor. I felt like the Patriots would trade for him and not stay with Jarrett Stidham, or they would sign Brian Hoyer over Cam Newton, former NFL MVP Cam Newton. So, to me, I don't see how Cam Newton is going to be in that starter regime again. He's going to have to get lucky with an injury from the starter wherever he's at next season, and he's going to have to stay healthy. And those are two things that it's going to be very hard to get at the same time. I mean, I don't know, because Jacksonville, you think they would trade for him by now, or they would have. I think they are committed to Gardner Minshew. I feel like Gardner Minshew offers them a lot more in what could be 3 years than Cam Newton can in 1.
All Gardner Minshew offers is ticket sales, nothing else.
I think Cam Newton would also offer ticket sales.
He'd offer wins too.
And yeah,
what's not? Cam Newton's a proven quarterback. His health has been bad the past couple seasons, but I mean the best fit for him realistically would probably be Denver. I think Denver is a good fit.
Denver brought in Jeff Driscoll, and they've made decisions with quarterbacks too, and I feel like it's almost like musical chairs at this point. And the people that don't have chairs right now are Cam Newton and Jameis Winston, and they got to find a seat, otherwise they're not going to have a spot. And I think it might be too late. I don't see them getting a starting job at this point, because also you have to keep in mind there's going to be rookie quarterbacks coming in as well. Justin Herbert, Tua, Joe Burrow, those guys. Jordan Love might compete for a starting job this year. So those guys probably offer more upside than what Cam is bringing, what Jameis might be bringing. So to me, I think that Cam Newton will eventually. I think Cam Newton will go somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where that is. I would imagine it's in the AFC though. I don't think that Carolina is going to want to trade within their conference.
I don't think there's a team in the NFC for him to fit on.
Exactly. That's another thing, too. I think the one team that I thought in the NFC that would make sense was Washington, but they went out and they got his teammate Kyle Allen. So, I think Carolina, for me, they're going to be dealing with a rough season ahead, but they're going to set themselves up nicely in the draft in 2021, just like they are in 2020, and it's a couple-year project for them. So let's give a final grade for the Panthers. Robert, we'll start with you.
D. I mean, they lost a ton. The only thing keeping it from an F is bringing in Bridgewater.
Okay.
Just their internal handlings with everything, losing Olsen, probably losing Cam, losing Luke Kuechly to retirement. It's a lot to overcome.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that's probably going to tank. I just don't. Last year, I think, was the year where they could surprise, and they were surprising a lot of people with McCaffrey and all that last season, but they fell off real quick.
Jaret, what do you got?
I'll give them a C. It's an offensive league. They went out and got probably the best available quarterback besides Tom Brady. Yeah, I'd say the Panthers get a C for that.
I'll go C plus because I think that there is a sense of direction with Carolina in this free agency. I think you can tell what kind of team they're trying to build, and they're moving. They at least have purpose with the moves that they make. They're not just making moves for the sake of making moves, which is something that I think I can say about the next team we'll talk about is the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta made a splash last week by signing Todd Gurley to a 1-year contract.
Dumpster fire there. Oh, boy.
But, yeah, Atlanta, not a whole lot of positives other than that. They lost multiple starters on defense, including Desmond Trufant to Detroit, Vic Beasley to Tennessee, Devondre Campbell to Arizona. They lose their top tight end, Austin Hooper, where they flipped him to get Hayden Hurst from Baltimore. Cost them a second-round pick as well. And Wes Schweitzer, one of their interior linemen, goes to Washington as well. So, Todd Gurley's obviously the key signing here, Robert, but is this a good move for Atlanta?
No, I mean, look, I love Todd Gurley. I was saying earlier on the show, it's bittersweet that the Rams lost him, but look, his arthritis is really going to prevent him from ever being a top back again. I mean, it's very clear. Atlanta, the saving grace is that Atlanta's not paying him much. I think they're paying him like $5 million this season.
$5 or $6 million, yeah.
Yeah, and that's only because the Rams are still paying him $20 million this season. So in reality, he's making like $25 million. But no, I think I don't know how much of an upgrade on Devontae Freeman he is. I think they're making the right approach with Gurley, where it's 1-year deal. See if they can get something out of him. But this whole like marketing campaign of them with Matt Ryan and Julio and Gurley now saying like, oh my God, look how elite this offense is. It's like, no, I don't see it with Gurley there. I just don't. He's not an every down back. And I see how when he doesn't get the touches he wants, I see how frustrated he gets. And I think it's frustration not just at the team, but at himself. So that's a big concern with him. I don't think is going to get the touches he necessarily needs all the time. Because I just don't think he's an every touch kind of running back anymore, just given his arthritis condition.
Yeah. I think that it was, again, a low risk, high reward. You're getting the third highest paid back in the league for a fraction of the cost. So I think that they have that going for them. But other than that, I mean, I don't think it's much of an upgrade to Devontae Freeman. If it is, I think, he's just, when he got hurt last year in the postseason, it really stunted his development. And I say development because I do think that there was a chance for more from Todd Gurley and a chance for him to get even better than where he was after they went to the Super Bowl. But it's just, it's not there anymore. Just one season later, the Rams said goodbye. And they would have rather cut him than to have to keep paying him. And to me, that's a sign of, how washed is Todd Gurley? Jaret, how washed
or was he overused? I don't know.
He's washed because he was overused.
Yeah, he is. I don't know, because he's still this touchdown machine. Like, give him the ball in the red zone, he'll score. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you need an every down back. I don't know if even Atlanta was. It is low risk. You guys are saying $6 million, but is it even worth the risk? Is it I thought Atlanta made a huge mistake letting Tevin Coleman go. Yeah, and we saw how that worked out for the 49ers. I always thought Tevin Coleman was the best running back in that locker room, but he couldn't stay healthy during his time in Atlanta, and now we're seeing Devontae Freeman can't stay healthy. So let's bring in another running back that can't stay healthy. What's the trend here?
Yeah.
Why don't you go out and get someone young, or get someone that is gonna stay healthy?
Yeah. Something I will say though about Atlanta is they had a really good second half of the year last year, and that had a lot to do with an improved defensive play. And I think that they cut some of the pieces that didn't really work anymore. Desmond Trufant was not the same player that he once was. Vic Beasley, not the same player he once was. Both of them are gone. Devondre Campbell's probably the one exception to the rule where he was playing pretty well last season, but he is moving on as well to Arizona. So, and you do lose Austin Hooper as well, which is a big part of the offense. You replace him with Hayden Hurst, which, to me, despite playing the same position, that's like trading an apple for an orange. You're not really getting the same thing.
Well, the Falcons, I mean, I just wanted to touch on the running back thing real quick. The Falcons didn't have a running back go over 89 yards last year. Did not have a rusher go over 89 yards.
And maybe they go and they get someone in the draft that can possibly be a contingency plan in case Todd Gurley is hurt yet again. And it's very possible that that will happen once again. And you look at the running backs that they had. I think Brian Hill was someone that showed some promise towards the end of the season. Kadri Ollison, another guy that could make some noise in 2020. I think that with Atlanta, though, I think that this offseason doesn't move them in any one direction. I don't think they get better. I don't necessarily think they get worse either. So they replaced all of their guys they got with comparable players. They didn't really get too much of an improvement in one position. I mean, you can argue that maybe Dante Fowler is an upgrade over what Vic Beasley was last season, but you also lose Devondre Campbell, and, Dante Fowler can't necessarily be playing outside and inside, and, who knows if Dante Fowler is going to be able to stay healthy either. He's also had injury history. So let's just grade Atlanta here really quickly, finish out the NFC South. Robert, what you got?
Yeah, I'm thinking a C. Bang average. I'm not sold on Hayden Hurst. I think they lost big on Austin Hooper. Even though I think Austin Hooper is a little overpaid, Hurst is looking like he's not going to be a top tight end. Gurley is, we're talking about a guy that's 25 years old, and we're talking that he's washed already. Low risk move, but I don't think it's going to move the needle much. And Dante Fowler, was great next to Aaron Donald, but I think he's just another guy that they just gave a way too big of a contract to.
Yeah. Jaret, what do you got?
C minus. You brought in another health risk. You let go a decent tight end for a scrub. You let Vic Beasley go. Atlanta's kind of just going to sit at the bottom of that division, I think, for a while.
Yeah, I'm not looking too much at Atlanta's moves here. I'm going to give it a C as well. I think average is a good word to use to describe their offseason thus far. Although the Dante Fowler signing is probably their most impressive, I don't think they get much better anywhere else. So a C for Atlanta. So let's move out west here. Let's go to the defending NFC champion, San Francisco 49ers, who have had one of the more quiet off seasons to everyone else. I think their biggest move, though, is
who they got rid of.
Who they got rid of. DeForest Buckner traded to Indianapolis for the number 13 overall pick in this upcoming draft. So now, the San Francisco 49ers, who just made it to the NFC, or just became the NFC champions, were up by multiple scores halfway through the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, now have 2 first-round draft picks. Was that a good move for San Francisco, Robert?
I think it kind of has to be. I mean, it's a retooling for them because, they are going to have to start paying a lot of guys. Kittle's rookie contract comes up, I believe, after this season, so he's going to...
Eric Armstead came up this season, and they paid him over DeForest Buckner.
Yep.
Was that right, Jaret, for them to pay Armstead over Buckner?
Well, I think when they realized they can get the 13th overall pick, it was.
Yep.
I mean, you have to look at it that way. I mean, if they turn Buckner into, I don't know who yet.
They could turn him into Javon Kinlaw, someone who is
probably
similar up to him in terms of defensive tackle. They can go and get a plug-and-play defensive tackle.
Maybe they're playing the rookie contract game where you just keep someone good on a rookie contract forever, so you don't have to pay that position.
There you go.
I don't know. It could be. It's
You
not
just
like a
rotating
bad
guys.
idea.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Spend money elsewhere and just bring a rookie in every 3 years to fill that position. I mean, they're a great team. I mean, Nick Bosa is going to be there forever.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, I think whoever you put next to Nick Bosa is going to be good.
Yeah, I think that it was smart for them to try to at least get something out of Buckner that wasn't just a comp pick. They would have gotten probably one of the higher comp picks if they lost to Forrest Buckner, so it would have been a third-round pick. Instead, they get a first-round pick, and not just a first-round pick, a top 15 pick at that. And I think that they are retooling, and it wouldn't surprise me if they end up back in the Super Bowl once again.
Yeah, I still think
I'm gonna say I think they're built. They are built how you want to build a team in the NFL nowadays. It's you strong defensive line and a strong running game, and they do both of those very well. And it's not just a strong running game; it's a versatile running game. It's a game. It's a you can have multiple guys run for 100 yards, and the fact that they have that and a defensive line that continues to get better every year. Even though they're trading DeForest Buckner, they still don't necessarily lose that trade. I think it's a wonderful move from San Francisco, and I think the loss of Emmanuel Sanders, they can find a replacement for Emmanuel Sanders a lot easier than they can get a replacement for, say, I'm glad that they were able to get at least one of Armstead and Buckner back. And I think Emmanuel Sanders, they should not have an issue finding a replacement for him.
My thing is that I still think the Seahawks were a better team than the 49ers were last year. So it's kind of like, I feel like the 49ers need to get better. I felt like we saw their peak last season. I don't know. That's just personal. Like, I think we saw the 49ers play their best football that we're going to see. So, I mean, they proved me wrong.
But Nick Bosa was just a rookie.
But is Jimmy Garoppolo going to get better?
Jimmy Garoppolo, that was his first full season of good health.
Is he gonna get better?
I think so. I don't think he's gonna get worse.
I still look at that Super Bowl. He missed a pass that every NFL quarterback should make if you're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That Emmanuel Sanders ever throw. Doesn't win him the game, but it puts him up with a minute 30 left in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think Garoppolo. If rumors were true that Tom Brady wanted to go to San Francisco and the 49ers said no, I find that interesting. Just because with that team and the talent surrounded, Tom Brady will lead you to a Super Bowl and win it. Jimmy Garoppolo will just get you there, and you're going to have to play your cards right, which you saw they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I give him a B for the offseason.
B for the offseason. Robert, what are you giving the Niners?
Yeah, I think a B. Bringing back Armstead is good for them. The fact that they can get Javon Kinlaw most likely to replace DeForest Buckner, that's good as well. This is what they're going to have to do, though. I mean, if they want to stay competitive, they're going to have guys coming off of rookie deals, like I was saying, George Kittle. They're going to have guys coming off of rookie contracts they're going to need to pay, and they got a lot of talented guys to pay. So they're going to have to keep doing moves like this. But as long as they can retool, I think they're going to be fine.
I'm going to give them a B+. I really like that they were able to get such high compensation for DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner was a top 10 pick, so the fact that they're getting very similar to that 4 years later is very impressive to me. So DeForest Buckner trade gives the 49ers a B+ in this free agency period. Now let's move to one of the more active teams in the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks. So they've made moves most notably on that offensive line, getting some small deals done with former Jets lineman Brandon Shell, former Steelers lineman BJ Finney, and former Jaguars tackle Cedric Ogbuehi. Now, those aren't necessarily huge signings. They lose George Fant to the Jets, which I think is probably their biggest loss. But for me, I think that the Seattle Seahawks offseason will be defined by whether or not they can re-sign Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that one. For sure that's going to matter, but I mean, let's be real. Anyone besides their current 5 offensive linemen last year was going to be better. They had the worst offensive line. Russell Wilson got banged up, had no time to throw the ball. I feel like I saw the stat earlier, but like he was out of the pocket more than he was in the pocket. And I think Russell Wilson strives when he's in the pocket and then extends the play with his feet, not when he's just forced from snap just to run out of the pocket and make something happen. Russell Wilson just needed time last year, and I mean they were an inch away from getting a first round bye last year.
Yeah,
literally an inch. So they're still a very talented team. I mean, they have a great wide receiver core. They have a great offense. Adding Greg Olsen. I mean, bringing Bruce Irvin in. I mean, I think Seattle got a lot better this offseason. But yeah, if Clowney comes back, A+ for the Seahawks for sure.
Robert, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely needed to really, really retool the offensive line. You need to build around your star quarterback. You need to protect them. That's really a big thing that held them back from being, the top of the top teams. So they did well to address that this offseason. Yeah, and losing Clowney hurts. I mean, if they can't re-sign him, I think it's a little bit of a step back. But they can add somebody mid-season, most likely to sort of replace him. But yeah, no, they've done well to retool that offensive line.
Yeah, I think that with Seattle, what we've heard so far is they are working towards getting a deal with Jadeveon Clowney, but we're not really seeing that headway with anybody else. I think there was one rumor that says that he's looking at maybe the Titans. I think that anyone that has the cap space should be considered a landing spot for Jadeveon Clowney. I think that he's that kind of player that regardless of where you are, he improves your team. And that is, I think he's definitely the best free agent available left. And I think Seattle is going to be the team that does sign him. I think that Clowney hasn't. I think the Seahawks haven't given Clowney a reason to not re-sign him, and that they didn't want to re-sign him. And I don't think Clowney has a reason to not. Seattle's a contender, and he's comfortable there. I think he likes playing for Seattle, and I think that's important. He didn't necessarily have that towards the end of his tenure in Houston. I think towards the beginning he did, but towards the end it was not the case. So I think that's important to him, is that he can get a team that really cares about him playing there, and I think that Seattle is a good place for him. I hope he signs there, because I think that it could make Seattle that much better. I think if you're looking here, if Seattle doesn't sign him, I think they are a 10-win team. I think if they do sign him, I think they're more of an 11 or 12-win team. I think that's how much that Clowney changes the meter, if you will.
Yeah.
So
no, for sure.
I'm not going to grade the Seahawks. I think I'm going to give them an incomplete grade, only because I think that their offseason will be defined by whether or not they can get Clowney. If they don't sign Clowney, I'd give them a C-. If they do sign Clowney, I'll give them a B+. Like, that's how important he is to that team.
That's what they're sitting at like a B right now, but it's like still like under review. Like Scantron machine had a little glitch, and like they're going back to check it.
We need to regrade. Grade by hand.
It's not done yet. Yeah, it's got to be graded by hand and looked over thoroughly, because the best player left in free agency resides in Seattle, and so it depends on what they do with it.
Yep, Robert, what are you giving them?
Yeah, I mean, I have to kind of agree. I think that's the case with a lot of these teams, is probably most of them aren't done. But, just based on the fact that Jadeveon Clowney hasn't re-signed yet, I'd say B- probably. They address the offensive line, but you still need Clowney back.
Yeah. So let's move down south to Los Angeles, where the Rams sit as one of the teams that's probably lost the most in free agency. Not only did they lose Todd Gurley and Dante Fowler to Atlanta, Michael Brockers moved out east to Baltimore. Corey Littleton moved just down the road to the Raiders. And Nikel Roby-Coleman, Clay Matthews, both not returning. To replace them, they get Leonard Floyd from Chicago, former first-round pick. Ashawn Robinson, former Detroit Lion, also going to the Rams. They retain Andrew Whitworth, which I think was important for them, especially for that offensive line, gives them a true leader for that offensive line. But more losses than wins here for the Rams in the offseason thus far.
Yeah, it's been tough for him, right, Robert? I mean,
Yeah,
I know
Robert,
you're a
what do
Rams
you
guy,
have
but
to
it's
say
been
about
tough.
this as a resident Rams expert?
I would say the only loss that really concerns me is Corey Littleton. I'm really high on him. He's come a long way. I think it's a great signing for the Raiders. And, like I was saying earlier, the Rams, as being cap-strapped as they are, I mean, Littleton only got like $11 million a season. I think they expected him to get a little bit more than that. So they moved on from him. But that's the only one that really concerns me. Michael Brockers has not been good in like 2 seasons. He's pushing 30. His career is starting to downgrade.
Would you say
I think
Ashawn Robinson is an upgrade to Brockers?
I think so. I think, Robinson was hurt a little bit last year, and the fact that he plays for Detroit doesn't help either. But he's like, 24? There's potential there with Ashawn Robinson, and I think it is an upgrade. The Leonard Floyd signing, I think, is a decent move as well. It's a 1-year deal. I think if you just put him with, Aaron Donald, you're already just doing what they did with Dante Fowler, just on the cheaper. You're putting a talented guy that, is just going to be vastly improved in that defense. They got a new defensive coordinator, so it'll be interesting to see how they look moving on from Wade Phillips. But, I think the defense is okay. I think it's really the offensive line, and bringing back Whitworth was step one. They re-signed Austin Blythe. It's getting better on the offensive line, and that's their biggest concern because you can't. It was a lot like Cleveland did with Baker Mayfield. You put a terrible offensive line in front of them, and they're going to struggle.
Right, and they've struggled. They struggled last year. That was probably their biggest area where they needed to improve, and they haven't necessarily done that. Which is why I'm going to give the Rams relatively, mediocre grade. I'll give them a C. I think that they just haven't done enough. And Corey Littleton, they need to. That I think is going to prove to be a bigger loss than people think. I think you hit the nail on the head, Robert. I think that they're really going to miss him, and I think they don't have someone that can fill in that gap just yet. Not saying that they can't get that. There are guys in free agency that might be able to be 70 cents to the dollar and be that guy, but I'm not sold yet on the Rams. Are you, Jarrett?
I don't think anyone's sold on the Rams. And C's passing, and they're not passing. They're a D at best. I mean,
oh yikes!
You're just losing so many assets, and then they're gonna lose Roby Coleman too, probably.
They already did. They cut him.
Yeah, they cut him.
Yeah, so that's. I mean, you're just losing too many parts to a core. They got rid of Marcus Peters, got rid of Akitali. It seems like the Rams are almost in rebuild mode on defense. Sue's gone. I mean, I know that's not the only one they've really retained is Donald. Don't get me wrong, best defensive tackle in the league.
Yeah,
I don't know. They just need to. I think this is a rebuild year, honestly, and then we'll see them back in 2 years.
Robert, what grade are you giving the Rams?
I'm going to give them a C for now.
Okay.
They're doing the best they can with the terrible contracts they've given out in the past. I really am looking forward to seeing how Micah Kaiser and Troy Hill take a step this year. Micah Kaiser was actually supposed to be their starting inside linebacker last year, and he got hurt out of camp. Didn't get a chance at all to play, but they're really high on him. Troy Hill really stepped up last year at corner. They're going to get a full year of Jalen Ramsey. That's going to be interesting to see as well. They got a lot of young guys. I think the running back situation, their offensive line is already better than it was to start last year, so that is a huge improvement.
Right.
And then, with the running back, they might go the 49ers approach with the committee. Without Gurley, Henderson needs to get, Darrell Henderson needs to get his looks there. Malcolm Brown is still there, and they might still sign a veteran running back like Carlos Hyde or something like that if they can afford him. So, it is a weird team, but even as bad as they were last year, they were still 9-7. It was a winning season. So with expanded playoffs, anything can happen. It's
They
just
did
that,
get in with expanded, right?
yeah,
I think they were the 7th.
they would have
Yeah.
actually won most every other NFC division, I think.
Yep.
Just based on record.
All right, so let's move from one team that has disappointed to one team that has done kind of the opposite with the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously making a big splash on day one with the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, but they also do sign some strong pieces to the defense. Devondre Campbell from Atlanta, Devon Kennard from Detroit, Jordan Phillips from Buffalo. I think that Arizona is the most improved team in the NFC West.
So that might be the most. Oh well, okay. Yeah, the Bucks got extremely better, but I mean they could be one of the most improved in the NFC.
Yeah, I think I'd say top 3 improved teams in the NFC. I'll throw them with Tampa, and I'll throw them with a team that I'll name later. But
I mean, you got a good wide receiver with a young quarterback. I mean, that's formula for championships right there. I mean,
now,
and they're adding on the defensive side of the ball.
I don't know if
they
Hopkins is. I'd like to think that Hopkins has more than just 2 good years ahead of him. But that's my guess. Is it's about 2 years for Hopkins. I don't necessarily think that's Arizona's title window per se, but I think that it's going to really help Kyler Murray's development.
Yeah, I mean the NFC West. I mean the NFC in general is just a better conference, top to bottom, than the AFC, and the NFC West arguably is the best division in football. If you look at,
you could say that. At least in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean it's so tough to say, this division is the best, especially preseason, because you don't know how teams are going to gel. But if you base it off last season and then look at what teams have added, what teams have lost, I mean, the Seahawks 49ers really didn't lose much. The Cardinals gained a lot, and the Rams, I mean, they should still be.
I think from the Cardinals' perspective, they got a lot better from 18 to 19, and they're on the rise, and I think because of that, you can expect more of the same in year 2, and I think that in year 2 of the Kyler Murray era, and I think what we saw last year was there was a big improvement on offense, whereas on defense, you didn't necessarily see that same jump that you saw from the offense. So I think this year it's about getting the defense to kind of meet the offense, and the offense is going to improve as well. Obviously, getting DeAndre Hopkins helps, and bringing in Kenyon Drake for the full year is really going to solidify their skill players. But on defense is where they're going to get better with Devondre Campbell, with Devon Kennard, Jordan Phillips down on the defensive line. I think that you're looking at a team that is going to get a lot better on defense. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Arizona has to offer. Robert, are you worried that the Arizona Cardinals might leapfrog the Rams here?
They definitely could. I mean, they definitely got better on defense, and obviously on offense. I mean, they re-signed Kenyon Drake.
Right.
Kyler Murray's coming off Offensive Rookie of the Year. DeAndre Hopkins is a top 2 wide receiver in the league. They still got Larry Fitzgerald. It's a really good team on paper. But, like we saw with the Browns last season, to go back to them, I mean, games aren't won on paper. You have to prove that even with all that talent that you can put it all together, and it remains to be seen. You got to see the season how they look. It is still Arizona. Arizona has that history of underachieving like the Browns. So I'll say it's like the Browns situation going into last year where we have high hopes for them. We can see Arizona finally turning a corner. It's just up to them whether they will actually turn that corner or not.
That's a really good take, actually.
Yeah.
That's so accurate. That's actually scary. Yeah, they're the Browns of the NFC.
Ding, ding. All right, so let's grade the Cardinals here. So I actually really like what they've done. I'm going to give them a B+. I think that none of the signings that they made were very, out of left field. I think every signing they've made helps their team not just this year, but in years in the future, not just 2020. They didn't lose too much either. Rodney Gunter goes to Jacksonville, but they replace him with Jordan Phillips. To me, is an upgrade. So I'm going to give a B plus for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I have to agree. I had a B plus down for him too. Getting Hopkins through trades, adding on the defensive side of the ball, and not really overspending. I think been a good offseason for him.
Yep. Robert, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'll third that. I'll go B plus,
Right.
with the potential to go A if it all works out. But yeah, right now it's looking real nice for Arizona.
B plus across the board. It's like my report card. But anyway, um, we're about the halfway point. We spent an hour talking about the first two divisions. We'll spend a little less than that for the next two divisions, so we're going to go a little bit quicker here. But we're going to move now to the North, and we'll talk about the NFC North champion Green Bay Packers. So they go out, they have a shakeup at linebacker where Blake Martinez, Kyler Fackrell go to New York. They bring in Christian Kirksey from Cleveland. Brian Balaga goes to LA. They replace him with Ricky Wagner from Detroit. So they lose Jimmy Graham as well. I don't think that's a huge loss for them.
It doesn't matter.
No.
But what do we think about Green Bay right now? What do you think, Jarrett? What are you feeling about Green Bay?
I don't think they got better. I don't think they got worse. As long as Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback, they're gonna be good at football. That's just numbers show itself. They statistically never had a great defense, and every year they're 12-4, 13-3, 11-5, 12-4. I mean, it's just when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, he makes things happen. I don't think the Packers are so worried on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I still think getting rid of HaHa Clinton-Dix a year ago when they did was in their best interest.
They got Adrian Amos out of it though, and he played pretty well this year.
True, but I just thought he was probably the best corner and safety, whatever they'd had in a while, and they let him go for basically nothing to the Redskins.
I think
Wait.
for the thing is, I think that the losses they had, Balaga. And I think Balaga is a big loss. I don't think that that is going to be. I don't think that's being talked about enough. I think that Balaga is a bad loss for them. And Ricky Wagner, although a decent tackle, he's going to be their starting right tackle. Probably not on the same level.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, but at the end of the day, you're in the NFL for a reason. And you need to be able to just give Rodgers what? What are we saying? 2 seconds, a second, 1.5, and he'll make something happen. I mean, thank God you're with Rodgers. He's one of the best quarterbacks, and he's used to having a bad offensive line. So, but I mean, Balaga's been with him for years, so it'll be an interesting turn. But my point is, I don't think they've got worse. I don't think they've gotten better.
Would you agree with that, Robert?
I kind of agree there. Martinez hurts, Balaga hurts. I don't really think they added enough to really make that much of a difference. Again, it's the Aaron Rodgers factor. If you can keep him healthy, you can keep him playing the majority of the season, they have a chance to win the division and, at least get into the playoffs at the very least.
So we talked about it briefly on the show earlier today. Y'all did. Robbie Anderson's a free agent. Now, John Whitley brought this up. Geronimo Allison's a free agent. They desperately need a receiver. I think that was made clear last season. Do they make a play for Robbie Anderson? Do they make a play for, say, a Brashad Perriman? Do they go for a wide receiver in free agency, or are they going strictly in the draft for receiver?
Sorry, I'm just disgusted that the Rams just revealed their new logo.
Oh,
and it's
so bad. Oh my god.
It's official now. Oh,
yeah, that's
yuck.
terrible. I hope that's the alternate. They have that other Rams head. It actually looks decent, and the colors are great. But yeah, that LA logo was terrible.
Jeez, that's the same thing. LA and the little ram horn thing. Oh yeah, but Robbie Anderson. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. John had said Robbie Anderson to the Packers, and I could see it because who was that Randall Cobb for him last year? Because it wasn't Randall Cobb.
No, it was.
I mean, what was it? Geronimo Allison?
Yeah, it was. Geronimo Allison was his slot receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really good because Robbie Anderson's a really good deep threat, and Devontae Adams is just Mr. Reliable for Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
They do need one more guy. Sadly, they don't use tight ends properly in that offense. So Jimmy Graham never worked out. Jared Cook never worked out. Mercedes Lewis probably won't even see the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come down to how the two Aarons play on that offense. You have Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers. But if they can go out and if they're willing to spend for a wide receiver, which they haven't recently, I think that's Aaron Rodgers' decision. If he wants another guy, they'll go out and make him happy.
Yeah. All right, let's grade Green Bay right here. I'm not very high on Green Bay's offseason. I think a C- is what they are worthy of. I just think that they haven't made enough upgrades to their roster. I think their roster got worse overall. C- for the Packers.
I'll give them a C. They just haven't done much. They just did the minimum to get by the class.
Mm-hmm. Robert, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking a C. I just don't really care either way if it what they did. It's just they didn't get better, they didn't get worse. It's bang average.
Yeah. Let's move briefly on to Minnesota. Haven't done much additions, much adding to their roster. Michael Pierce coming in from Baltimore to fulfill that defensive line hole that Stephen Weatherly vacates, going to Carolina. They also lose Linval Joseph, Trey Waynes. They cut Xavier Rhodes. Everson Griffin is not returning. They trade Stephon Diggs.
The Vikings might have had the worst offseason.
They have not done a whole lot. I don't think there's much else to really talk about.
They only signed Michael Pierce. That's it.
Yeah, I mean,
and they let everyone else go.
Okay, but did they get enough for Stephon Diggs?
Got a first round at least. Thank God. Take notes, teams. Get first round picks for your good players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien.
Hey.
Give me that.
I'm not Bill.
Don't disrespect Bob.
Yeah. No, B.O.B. Do not. But anyway, hey, he scored 24 points in less than one half in an AFC playoff game. So
yeah, in one quarter.
Yeah, in one quarter. Can you do that?
And then I don't know.
Not even the Chiefs can do that. See?
No. No, but the Vikings haven't done much. They have a nice stadium that kills a lot of birds, and that's about all I got on that.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we'll give the Vikings an incomplete, just because they haven't really done enough.
Nah, we can give them like a D because they got rid of so much.
But could they go and get Robbie Anderson now? Is this a decent landing spot for him now?
I actually said Robbie Anderson. That was his fit. They need someone. Someone's got to replace Diggs.
Someone's got to sign Robbie Anderson too. There's no way he's going unrostered this year.
No, obviously. I mean, worst case scenario, he ends up on the Jets again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude, what if he went to LA to the Rams?
Yeah. All right.
I still think Anderson ends up back with the Jets.
Yeah. Let's switch gears here to Chicago. They've had some pretty questionable decisions. Signing Robert Quinn, 5 years, $70 million. I think that's a great move a couple years ago, but they do that here as well. Jimmy Graham, 2 years, 16, another questionable move in my opinion. They get Nick Foles from the Jaguars, another questionable decision. They just a lot of question marks here for the Chicago Bears. Would y'all agree with me, or are y'all going to back up these moves they've made?
I like what they've done, you know? I mean, Robert Quinn had 12 sacks last year, or I think it was 11 and a half.
Okay.
Jimmy Graham, I mean, I've always said Jimmy Graham hasn't been the same because no one used him the way the Saints used him. Like, Jimmy Graham would have kept up his numbers if he was on the Patriots the way, because Brady knew how to use Gronkowski, and he would have used Graham the same way. Foles, I mean, that was just a disaster last season. I mean, breaks his collarbone in the first quarter of the first game, but still threw a dime. Don't get it twisted. He still threw a dime, but he came back and that was a disaster. I mean, getting rid of some pieces on defense, adding some pieces, like it's a solid offseason, but everything revolves around Mitch. I feel like every time we talk about the Bears, it's Mitch this, Mitch that. I still think their biggest mistake was getting rid of Jordan Howard last year because they didn't really have a great run offense this year. But I don't know. They're just Maybe like a C, just pass it
Robert
by.
Quinn, this will be his 5th city in 6 years.
Yeah, good for him. He's
St.
really playing.
Louis, LA for 2
Okay,
years, Miami, Dallas, and now Chicago.
yeah, it's only his fourth team though, so
Robert, I mean, you're familiar with Robert Quinn. He had his best season last year since his 19 sack year in 2013. But he's turning 30 in May. Was it worth paying someone $72 million who's entering their age 30 season?
I mean, no, definitely the money on that's real high. I mean, I think that's what you usually see with like at least close to marquee signings in free agency. They overpay. They always overpay. But Quinn joins a defense that's really, really good. They already got Roquan Smith. They already got Khalil Mack. So it's a nice defense they have in Chicago, and just adding Quinn, even at his age, even the amount of money they're giving him, it's still a really really nice move, I think, and it does improve their defense even further. So it's just the other side of the ball they have to be concerned with. Is Nick Foles really a number one? Are they really done with Mitch Trubisky? Is Jimmy Graham really the answer that they've been looking for at tight end? I think those are the big questions, and that's why I agree with you, Jeremy. They got a lot of questions on that team still.
Yeah, I think to me the Bears are in a very crucial year in my opinion. I think that Matt Nagy's job is no longer secure. I think he's coaching for his job this season. I think he'll most likely be retained for 21. But if they have like a 5-11 year in Trubisky's, this is the last year in Trubisky's contract. They brought in Nick Foles now to possibly be the quarterback of the future. There's Khalil Mack isn't getting any older, isn't getting any younger. Um, they have a lot of. This is an important year for the Bears. I think more important than most teams because I think if they don't perform well this year, it's grounds enough to completely chop everything out and start from scratch. And I don't think they want to be at that point yet because I think that this Bears team has unfinished business, and they were so close to going places just a season ago, and it was cut short. And then they move into this season, and it's a total regression. And if that's another total regression, it's not going to be. It's going to set you back 5 years. Whereas this year, if you improve, you could be looking back towards another playoff spot. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, man, it's just that division's tough too.
Mm-hmm.
Every division's tough when I feel like you're in the lower half if you're one of the bottom two, just because the Packers and Vikings are so much ahead. But yeah, everything you said I can agree with there.
Yeah. So,
yeah, same.
Who starts week 1? Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky? We talked about a little bit on the show.
It has to be Foles, right? You don't pick up that contract to keep him on the bench. There's no way.
I mean, yeah, but also you bring him in to push Mitch Trubisky. I think that Mitch
You're
Trubisky
paying
is going to have
$66 million for a tutor.
it's a very expensive tutor, very expensive clipboard holder. But I mean, to me, I think they're going to give Mitch Trubisky every chance in the book to possibly win this job. And
I think it's an open job, though. I don't think it's like set.
I think it's open.
I think it's just going to be whoever has a better camp.
I think Nick Foles is also going to have a good chance at the job. But if I had to put, it is tough. I think, it could be. I think it's 51% that Trubisky gets it and 49% that Foles gets it.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know how, if you start Foles for the season, I just don't see how Trubisky comes back from that unless Nick Foles is just that bad that they say, okay, we'll give Trubisky another shot. I don't see how he gets out of that. If he starts on the bench, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Maybe they play Trubisky a couple weeks, have him have a good couple weeks, but they still lose games because their defense sucks or something, and then they just trade him.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe.
That's a good point. Build value.
I don't know, because there's no reason to have Mitch and Nick Foles on your roster. Because they're both starters, in my opinion. Mitch could go start for terrible teams. He could have started on the Steelers last season.
Yeah. So let's grade the Bears here. I'm gonna go with a B minus, and this is why. I think they're showing signs of wanting to be good this year, and they need to be good this year. I get that you lose Clinton Dix. I get that you lose Nick Kwiatkowski. I get that you lost some pieces, but at least you're trying to compete this year. You're not gonna just take this year and accept that what you did last year was good enough, because it wasn't. And I think that is going to pay off for the Bears. They're setting a tone, which is important at this point in the year.
They're C plus still. I mean, they don't pick till 43rd in the draft unless they trade back into the first. So It's like it's been a rough offseason because they didn't get anyone that's just going to instantly make their team better, which you have a chance to do in the first round of the draft, and they don't even have a chance to do that. So they're just sitting at a C plus right now.
C plus. All right. So Robert, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with that. C plus. Like I said, I like the Robert Quinn signing, but there's just way too many questions with Graham and Foles. They got like nine or 10 tight ends signed to contracts on that team still.
Yeah.
It's just like it's like a revolving door at tight end.
Is Burton still there too?
I think so.
I think he's still there because they gave him the bag after the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move to the final team in the NFC North, the Detroit Patriots. I mean the Detroit Lions, excuse me. You might as well call them the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Patriots, because they acquired 3 expatriates, Jamie Collins, Duron Harmon, Danny Shelton, all through 2 through signings and 1 via a trade. Duron Harmon acquired in a trade. Collins and Shelton signed to contracts. They also get Desmond Trufant from Atlanta, Nick Williams from their rival in Chicago. They get Hal Vaitai from Philly. So a busy offseason so far for Detroit.
They lose Slay.
They did lose Darius Slay. They did lose Devon Kennard, Ashawn Robinson, 3 starters from that defense, and then 2 starters from their offensive line. Ricky Wagner going to Green Bay, Graham Glasgow going to Denver. So a busy offseason for Detroit, and for a team that's picking 3rd overall, they needed to change that team in some way, shape, or form, and they've done that so far.
All they had to do was trade Stafford for someone on the defensive side of the ball, draft a quarterback, and I'd say this would be a perfect offseason for him.
Really? A perfect offseason?
I think there's because I'm really actually growing on Justin Herbert.
Yeah?
I think he's going to be – I truly think he's the best quarterback in the draft class. I think he'll be better than Burrow. Do I think most talented is Burrow right now? Yes, but who do I think will have the most success? I think Herbert will. He's grown on me, watching his pro days, watching his tapes and stuff. But obviously Joe Burrow's still the number 1 guy. But the Matthew Stafford era, I said it this morning, it's a downhill slope. It's just there's too much going on. Mm-hmm. There's too much controversy between Matt Patricia and his star players. I mean, Slay was just saying when he was there, he wasn't happy with them. I don't really know if Stafford likes him because he's not an offensive-minded coach, which Stafford's never played with. Keep in mind, like Schwartz was a defensive-minded coach, Patricia's a defensive-minded coach, but they let Stafford play, and I just feel like they kind of took that power away from him. I mean, then again, he got hurt last year. It was a terrible year for the Lions in general, but it's kind of like take the training wheels off Stafford. He's the most paid quarterback in the league for a reason, or was.
Yeah.
Still? I have to check that.
Robert, what are you feeling with Detroit and the amount of moves that they've made?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely added a lot. I think losing Darius Slay hurts a lot, just because it is a veteran presence there and a guy that is really probably the best defensive player on that team.
What are they going to turn that into as well? They got a 3rd and a 5th.
Yeah, not much. It's interesting, though. I mean, Matt Patricia's really going for it here. This is probably his make-or-break season.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going the safe approach, bringing in Collins and Harmon and Shelton. He's going with the guys he knows, the guys he's coached before. So it is the safe approach. It is, they are good players. Jamie Collins was really good going back to New England last year. They got him on the cheap. They made him back into a productive linebacker. So I think Detroit did make some nice additions. I don't know if it's enough to get out of last place in that division, but, it is the safe approach by Matt Patricia, getting some guys that he knows he can trust.
Yeah. I think Detroit's offseason will be defined by the draft rather than free agency. They did get replacements for Ashawn Robinson with Danny Shelton. I think that was probably the best signing out of this group in itself. How Vaitai replaces Ricky Wagner at the tackle position. Not sure if that's totally an upgrade, but that's definitely someone that you can, start week one. Nick Williams is also someone that you can start week one. Desmond Trufant replaces Darius Slay. Jamie Collins will be in there probably week one as well. Devon Kennard's replacement. So they got a lot of guys that they're going to start right away in Detroit, and that could mean anything. I think that could mean you could be, a contender next year. I doubt it, but when you are the third worst team in the NFL, like the Detroit Lions were last season, you have to make a change. Otherwise, you're going to get the same results, and they're doing that.
Who's gonna start at running back for him? Like, is Kerryon Johnson gonna be healthy and play? I'm gonna guess it's his job still.
It could be. I know that J.D. McKissick signed with Washington, so it's not gonna be him. Kerryon Johnson, if he's healthy, probably is the guy that they're going to start.
It's just like because that was running back by committee last year.
Yeah, they had so many different running backs last year. Some guys that you never even heard of until they scored. You were like, who?
Then you pick them up the next week in fantasy, and they do nothing.
Exactly. Who were the guys? Oh man, who were those guys that they picked up? Oh man, Wes Hills. I know he scored.
Wes Hills.
Bo Scarborough was their running back at one point last year.
Solid.
Ty Johnson was a fantasy option last year at one point.
Jeff Driscoll was their leading rusher in a couple of games.
Jeff Driscoll. Jesus.
Jeez.
They had a lot of injuries last year, and I think that was more of their issue than anything else. They just couldn't stay healthy.
Patricia needs to get control of that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally it. I'll give them a bye on the win-loss last year. Injuries, I get it. They add up. But no control over the locker room at all.
Yeah. Their last win, October 27th, week 8.
That doesn't count. They played the Giants.
They did play the Giants. What about the last one against the Philadelphia Eagles? Does that count?
Oh, 100% it counts. It was in Philly.
Yeah.
I remember that game. Should have won that game.
All right, yeah. All right, so let's move away from the NFC North, and let's move on to Philly, the winners of the NFC East season ago. I think they obviously make a big splash, get Darius Slay from Detroit. They go and they sign Javon Hargrave from Pittsburgh. Will Parks comes in from Denver. Jatavis Brown comes in from the Chargers. They've made a lot of changes. Malcolm Jenkins on his way out. Hal Vaitai on his way out. Jason Peters on his way out. Ronald Darby, Aguilar, Howard. For another team that had, surprisingly, despite them being a playoff team, Jarrett, you can talk about this on end if you wanted to. But a lot of personnel issues, but they were able to, figure it out in December, and that's ultimately what counted when they came into the playoffs. But I think free agency for them was a very important time for Philly.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't even figure it out last year. They just played a good string of 4 football games. Like, let's be honest, they did not figure it out last year. They barely beat the Giants, then they barely beat the Redskins, then they barely beat the Cowboys, and then ran away with the Giants game in the fourth quarter. They didn't figure it out. They just played. They scraped by. That's literally it. I still think if Wentz was healthy in that playoff game, they win that playoff game, and it's a bit different. But my big thing was just seeing the additions and seeing those subtractions were perfect. The only one I didn't really like was Malcolm Jenkins, just because he's the vocal leader, the leadership in general. But getting rid of Aguilar, thank God. Oh my gosh, that guy is such a pain.
Now
I lose sleep some nights thinking about Aguilar.
Can Darius Slay take over that role as the vocal leader of that defense?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to rely on Brandon Graham.
Yeah.
It has to. It's just going to have to go to Brandon Graham. He's been there the longest. It's his team. I mean, it was his defense, but then when Jenkins came in, he was like the vocal leader and he was like the visible leader. But I really think Graham is the backbone of the defense. I mean, him and Fletcher Cox really. I mean, they're the 2 big players in the front on the line making plays.
For a secondary that was struggling as is, how big of a loss is Malcolm Jenkins?
He didn't do much last year, I'll
Darius
be
Slay and
honest.
Will
He was
Parks, recover that?
the thing with Jenkins is we didn't really put him one-on-one with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
He was always the zone guy. I don't know. When we played teams with big physical wide receivers and he just didn't get the job done. It happens.
Yeah.
I think Slay's just a huge addition. Darby, I kind of want them to re-sign Darby. Like, I love Darby. When he's healthy, I think he's really good. But I just don't think Philly's going to take that risk again.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jordan Howard departure, I kind of saw it coming when he got hurt. I'm still convinced the coaches held him out last year because I don't get how a shoulder stinger can keep you out for 10 weeks. Like, is that not fishy to you?
I think they were probably more intrigued by Miles Sanders, someone they drafted.
Too.
And I think Miles Sanders will be able to pick up that load next year that Jordan Howard is going to vacate by moving on to Miami. But Robert, I want your perspective on this here.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're good.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the Darius Slay addition is real nice for them. That's a good guy to get in that defense. Jordan Howard's a little bit of a loss, but if they're willing to give Miles Sanders, a young guy that load that could work out real well for them. I mean, and obviously losing Nelson Aguilar, that's just fine for them. I mean, that guy drops so many passes. It's like you can't. When you're a team that needs consistency and needs a guy to rely on, you can't have a guy that you're worried about throwing to for Carson Wentz. That's the biggest concern for a quarterback like that is just getting a guy that you can't trust to make a big catch. So I think the Eagles got a little bit better. But yeah, the Slay trade is definitely what you're going to center around, and it is a good thing to center around. Jenkins isn't a huge loss. I mean, he's up there in age now. It's more of the intangibles, the stuff you can't measure. It's the locker room presence that you're going to miss the most, if anything.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Jaret.
I was just going to say, I hope they made a change on the medical team.
Oh,
gosh.
Ooh.
Oh, the strength and conditioning, someone. But my last thing I want to add is the Eagles need to find a package to get Alshon out of Philly.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows that.
You think Green Bay could be calling?
I don't care
who Minnesota
calls. Just give me someone on the defensive side or a draft pick. Give me a second round at worst. I don't even think he's valued at a second round.
Worst?
Give me a player then.
No, Alshon Jeffrey will warrant a 4th round pick at best.
Yeah, I know. Yes, because if the Hopkins doesn't get a 1st round pick, Alshon's not getting a 1st round pick.
No way.
Minnesota would be a nice place
Maybe
for him.
Maybe 5 years ago he gets a 1st round pick, but not now.
Yeah, when he first signed him, gets a 1st round pick.
I think something that's being overlooked here is Javon Hargrave signing. I think that is a huge signing for Philly.
Save money.
Save money. And he was probably, other than DeForest Buckner, probably the best interior defensive lineman in free agency. I really like that signing. When I saw it, I was like, that is a perfect fit. I love that signing from Philly. It kind of, it wasn't necessarily one that you 100% expected, but also, like, it happened. And Philly's defensive line is that much better because of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just want to see what they do at safety, too, because they re-signed Mills, and early rumors is Mills is going to safety. Which, God help me, if Mills is the last guy on the field to stop a touch, we're screwed. We're screwed. I love Mills, but he's not a safety.
Yeah, I mean, they have Will Parks. And who knows? You think, is there someone that you would like to see them get outside in free agency, like a safety? Would you want to see them go after Tony Jefferson, or maybe make a play for Nickel Roby-Coleman, someone who can play both in the corner and safety possibly?
This is going to sound weird, but I kind of want him to go get Xavier Rhodes.
Really? Be interesting.
Yep.
It'd be interesting.
I think it'd change a culture for him, a little fresh start.
Yeah.
And a defense that's already struggling, you can't get much worse in Philly on the defensive side. I really don't think so. Especially like playing the corner, say the DB position, you really can't get worse. You're expected to just show up on the field. I don't think you're expected to do much more.
Yeah. Do you think they maybe make a play for like a Rashad Jones?
You never know. Doug and Howie have made some great transactions throughout the years. I don't know. It's honestly, there are times where you're like, oh, we're not going to spend, and all of a sudden we're shelling out for everything. So we'll see. That can happen.
Right.
I
And
think they could seriously make a play for how do you say his last? Correct me on his last name. Yeah, Yannick
Yannick Ngakwe.
Ngakwe. There, thank you. I was going to say Ngo. Yeah, okay, good thing I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you asked.
He's flirting with other teams. You can tell he wants out of Jacksonville.
He wants
so
out of
bad,
Jacksonville,
even though
but
they
as
franchise
long as
tagged him.
Jacksonville wants him, they have no reason to get rid of him.
The
Yeah,
Rams,
unless he's really causing up that big of a stir, which I mean he keeps hinting that he wants out, but I mean that would be actually a really nice move for Philly if they could actually convince the Jags to trade him.
Mm-hmm.
Could they convince the Rams to get Ramsey?
Oh, there's no way. I don't think.
I'll take that.
Yep.
Nah, there's no chance. Not with Slay. They wouldn't have gone. Slay was the big corner they're getting. They're not going to go. I don't think they're going to go get a big name DB anymore. I think Slay was probably their guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's close this chapter on Philly. What are we grading them?
B. They got better.
Yeah, I agree. They did get better. I'm gonna give them a B
Yeah.
plus.
I'm always going to hate because,
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
always
seeing
a lot
Vitaly
harder on our team.
Seeing Vitaly leave, seeing Jenkins leave, it hurts, but they got better.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Robert?
Yeah, I'm gonna go B plus. Losing two veterans like Jenkins and Vaitai, it's hard, but adding Slay and really, Hargrave too. I mean, that's a big loss for Pittsburgh. Hargrave's a nice addition to that Philly, So I like the Slay and Hargrave additions.
And Fletcher Cox is gonna have fun.
Mm-hmm. All right, Let's move on from Philly to Dallas, a team that has made has lost a lot in free agency, but also they've lost a lot, but not too many pieces that I would think are huge. I think a big part of their free agency is obviously what they're going to be doing with Dak, and they ended up tagging Dak, which I think was the right
Just give
move.
him the bag already, please. Make him a Cowboy for life, please.
I think
Please make him a Cowboy for life.
I have a feeling that's a bit of a wish rather than a recommendation.
I can recommend. Hey, Jerry, you want to sign Dak to a lifelong contract of no Super Bowls?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
I'm done.
But they lost a lot. Robert Quinn signed a $70 million contract with Chicago. Malik Collins, Jeff Heath, Jason Witten all go to Las Vegas. I found that interesting that three guys from the same team went to Vegas. And you also saw that with 3 guys from New England went to Detroit, and 3 guys from New England went to Miami. But you have 3 guys from Dallas go to Vegas. Byron Jones signed another $70+ million contract with
He stole
with Miami.
That's robbery.
And then Randall Cobb signed a deal with Houston. Xavier Su'a-Filo signed a deal with Cincinnati. They lost a lot of pieces. They did gain Gerald McCoy and HaHa Clinton Dix. They retained Anthony Brown, which I thought was very important for them. So Dallas, did they lose too much, or were the parts they got that they no longer retained? Is that not going to be a big of an issue for them?
You want to go, Robert?
Robert, you
start.
It's up to you. I don't care.
You go first.
Out of the way. Yeah, I think Dallas is a weird team. I mean, they got a pretty good defense already. Losing Quinn hurts. Losing Jones hurts. But look, I mean, those guys both got way overpaid. I mean, you can't pay them that much when you got a franchise tag Dak and you got to empty out the bank for him, and you already emptied the bank for Amari Cooper, which was a big deal for them too. Even though I think he's a little overpaid, you still had to pay him to keep him around. But no, I mean, Dallas is in a decent position. They already got one of the top offensive lines in football. Their defense is solid, and really the thing is Dak, but they're obviously sold on him. Jerry Jones loves them, so I think the biggest move they did actually was just franchise tagging Dak. I mean, that was the biggest move they've done.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead, Jared.
The thing with Dak is he doesn't deserve the money he wants, but I want them to give it to him. But the Cowboys, they didn't get better. They didn't get better. That's for sure. I mean, Anthony Brown, if they lost Anthony Brown, this would have been a complete terrible offseason for them. I mean, they got McCoy for basically nothing. Like McCoy did not sign a contract that I think 3 years ago we said he'd be signing. Hocklin Dix is a good addition. I still think he's a solid safety. But again, it's just gonna rely. It's for the Cowboys to be successful. Dak is not the answer, and I mean, Dak's rookie season with Zeke, they had the best offensive line in NFL, and it showed. And ever since they've lost some pieces from there, they've struggled to perform. But if history repeats itself, the Eagles won't win the NFC East next year. So, I mean, I would say if the Eagles don't win it, the Cowboys would be the next favorite.
Fair.
Just because no team from
winning the NFC East, that's like winning fourth place in a horseshoe competition. Doesn't mean much.
I don't know what that means because the NFC East won the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
They did, but I mean, we're talking about 2020, not 2018. Jared.
Well, 2020, I mean, coronavirus, like this is crazy.
That's true. You never know what could happen in 2020.
There could not even be an NFL season.
Yeah, I think their biggest change in the offseason has nothing to do with anybody they put on the field. I think it has to do with Mike McCarthy over Jason Garrett.
You know what? I completely forgot that that should be added to the free agency list because they got better without Jason Garrett.
Yeah. It's funny because I was looking at like a site earlier to like confirm all of these things. They listed Jason Garrett as a free agent.
I think it has to be
because technically he wasn't fired; he just wasn't retained. So
when Dak turns the ball over, he's not going to get a nice round of applause from his head coach.
All right, so let's. Is there anything left to say on the Cowboys, or should we just get to grading?
No, they can make up for their free agency in the draft.
That's true. I think the draft will be more important for them than free agency. I agree with that. I'll give them a C. Fair, even. Didn't get better, didn't get worse. I'll give them a C. Robert, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna say a B-. The fact that they got Amari Cooper signed now, and that they're going to commit to Dak. I mean, even though I think Dak is massively overrated, I just think, that's their guy. It's important to get him signed. They need to get him signed.
Yeah.
So that was their main concerns this offseason.
Fair enough. So let's move from Dallas to New York. The Giants, they went out, got James Bradbury to be their number one corner. They got Blake Martinez to be their starting middle linebacker. They got Kyler Fackrell to be a starting linebacker for them. They're making moves in New York. I don't necessarily know if they're moves that are going to be very strong long term for them, but I think in the present they have done enough to get better this offseason.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't think the Giants really had to do much this offseason other than just, play last season and get better as a team. They're a young team. Like last year's, what were they, 4-12?
Something along
those lines. 4-12. So it's like I don't write that off like you know what? Like,
they held the 4th pick in the draft, so
it's what I expected from them, 4-12. So I mean, they have a great chance to get a nice draft pick here, tank one more season and then be good,
Yeah.
But they're just doing what they need to do.
They're 2 years away.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Robert, what are you thinking about the Giants?
Yeah, steps in the right direction. I like the Bradbury Martinez signings. It's a big year for Daniel Jones. I think this is really where the Giants will see if he can break out in his second year. If he can prove a lot of the doubters wrong and show why they picked him up so high in last year's draft. But no, I mean, the Giants are going in the right direction and in a very winnable division just because Washington doesn't have any hope in sight, really. It doesn't seem. And Dallas and Philly are, always sort of battling it out. But, I think the Giants can start closing the gap on those two teams and really start in the next couple of seasons, really start putting together something. But obviously that's really contingent on how Daniel Jones turns out as a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
My one question is, do we think Saquon is as good as, the media portrays him to be? Because I sincerely mean that. I don't think he's proven himself to even be called a good running back. I just think he hasn't done enough.
I don't know about that. That's kind of bold to say.
I mean, in 3 games last year, he was held under 70 yards until he had a 60-yard touchdown run. I think there
are
that's part of the game. Part of the game.
Yeah. He's had
one rushing yard against the Jets.
Okay, but also 2 1,000-yard seasons in the first 2 seasons of his career.
Yeah, I know. I guess I expected more from Saquon. Maybe that's my thing. Maybe I just expected too much out of the gate
this year too.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So maybe I just expected too much out of the gate from him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that look, you have to keep in mind that the team that the Giants are right now, it's a rookie quarterback, a second-year running back, soon to be second-year quarterback, and a third-year running back. They have places there that can succeed. Darius Slayton, I think, could be a number 1 receiver for them. Golden Tate had a good year for them last year once he got off of his suspension.
Eli Manning had a good season for him last year.
Unfortunately, they don't have Eli Manning anymore. So,
he did retire.
So, the thing with New York is they needed to get better on defense, and they did. Their signings, their offense, their free agency period so far has been defined by improving their defense, and they've done that with Martinez, with Bradbury, and I think they're taking steps in the right direction. So for that, I'll give them a B. A B.
A B minus. B minus.
B minus.
Adding Bradbury. I mean Bradbury and Martinez, 2 key parts on defense for me. Yeah. Bradbury's a really good corner. So.
Robert, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking a B. I really like the Bradbury and Martinez signings. They definitely got better on D, so that's a big concern for them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, step in the right direction.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the final team that we have yet to cover in the NFC, and that's Washington. So
we talked about them earlier. That nice little trade.
We did briefly discuss them a little earlier with Kyle Allen. Is that and they did get Kendall Fuller from Kansas City. They signed him to a $40 million contract. Now for Washington, I want to bring back Kyle Allen here. We've had some time to kind of marinate this news that he is now part of Washington. Kyle Allen or Dwayne Haskins, who starts week 1?
It's going to come down to camp, right?
I mean, yes, it will, but let's just say there is no camp because Corona, and we're starting right now. Who starts week 1?
Kyle Allen.
Really? Kyle Allen. That's interesting.
Yeah, just because Ron Rivera knows what he can do, I think.
Yeah.
But I would say by week 5, it's Haskins' job.
Now, that I think that's going to play a big role into how this season plays out because with the coronavirus taking away a lot of camp, there's not a whole lot of room to get these guys going before training camp. It might just be they might not have any chance for OTAs in April or May or June, and they might have to go straight into July and say, hey, training camp, let's go. And that is going to put a lot of teams at a disadvantage, especially those with new coaches like Washington, and especially with new quarterback situations. But with Kyle Allen going into Washington with the coach that he had in Carolina, Robert, does that help? Does that give you more of an incentive that it is going to be Kyle Allen starting week 1?
I mean, it definitely looks like that. Kyle Allen probably had a better season than Haskins last year. I'm not super impressed with Kyle Allen. I don't think he's going to be a number 1 quarterback for most of his career. But, there is that connection with Ron Rivera. Obviously, that's why they were probably comfortable trading for a guy like that. Maybe they see something with him, and since he is young, and there is the Ron Rivera connection. But no, I think, it really is going to come down to however much a camp they actually do get to have. But just the fact that they went out and made this trade, I think it has to be Kyle Allen's starting job, and Haskins is going to be sitting until further notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's something else. I mean, Darius Guice needs to get healthy and stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they drafted him to be, I'm trying to think, the Alfred Morris of the day. I don't really know. But they drafted him to be the every down back. And Adrian Peterson's kind of just been there, but Adrian Peterson's been the guy getting the workload because guys can't stay healthy.
Right.
And they're a good team. Haskins is, well, they're not a good team now, but like they have the talent to be a good team down the road. I still think they're 3 years away though. They're a step behind the Giants.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of funny how Kendall Fuller was with the Redskins, then traded for Alex Smith, and now back with the Redskins. We also need to think about this. Alex Smith, could he be there? I mean, we haven't really heard a lot from him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's out of consideration for that quarterback job either.
True, but I mean, is he gonna play? I don't think he's gonna play.
Who knows?
Washington released Kayvon Webster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Alex Smith is on the roster. So
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe,
I think Alex Smith is just gonna retire.
Yeah, maybe this move for Kyle Allen means that Alex Smith won't be on the roster.
It would have to be, right? Because why else would you? Yeah, it has to be that something's happening with Smith. You wouldn't go trade for a quarterback if Alex Smith was coming back, right?
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, before we sign off, let's grade Washington first. I like the Kendall Fuller signing. I think the Kyle Allen trade was definitely a good move, and they didn't have to spend a whole lot on him. He's a 5th-round pick, and he's only making $675,000 this year. None of it's
and they got rid of Josh Norman.
And they got rid of
great.
So I'm gonna give Washington a B+. I like the moves that they've made. They got Thomas Davis, who can be a veteran leader for that defense. Not necessarily be the best player on that defense, but can be a veteran leader for a defense that needs one. So, B+.
Yeah, they get a B- from me. They're still gonna win 4 games this year. Like, it's just not gonna matter what they do. You can't expect the team to just put it together in one season. Like, they're not just gonna go from 3-13 to something of a winning season. They haven't added anything special. They haven't, you know what you were saying earlier, added that player that can just instantly change a team. They haven't done that. Yeah. So they'll go up to like 4 or 5 wins this season. But
Robert, what are we thinking for the Washington?
I'm gonna say a C+. I'm not seeing anything here that moves the needle too much. Like Jarrett was saying, Kyle Allen is okay. Like I said, I'm not sold on him too much. It's, he's a marginal improvement on Dwayne Haskins. It's not that much. I like the Kendall Fuller signing, and at least they didn't overpay for Eric Flowers like the Dolphins did. So
the Dolphins have spent so much this year.
I still see Washington bottom of that division. I don't see them coming out of that, even with Allen, how much they trust him.
Mm-hmm. So before we sign off, I want just quick hits from both of you, and I'll give some as well. Which team is the most improved team in the NFC, and which team is the least improved in the NFC? And Jarrett, you're first in the alphabet, so we'll start with you.
Most improved. It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up between 2 teams. Tampa Bay. It's got to be Tampa Bay.
All right,
though.
Tampa Bay. Fair. Understand why. Wow.
They got the best quarterback of all time.
Which team got better defensively? Or not defensively. Which team did not improve the most? The least improved team?
The Falcons.
The Falcons.
Falcons just got worse.
Okay. All right.
That's just. I'm gonna be a Falcon hater for a while, but they just aren't good.
That's fair. All right, Robert, you're next.
Most improved, yeah. I think I'm gonna have to go the Bucks. I really like what they did there with Brady and obviously getting Pierre Paul back.
Yeah.
Nice additions. Least improved, Minnesota. They did nothing. They lost a lot of guys. I still think they'll probably make 1 or 2 more moves, and obviously they'll probably be active in the draft, trying to look for a wide receiver to replace Diggs. But yeah, definitely Minnesota did nothing to improve that team.
I think that I'll try some different answers. So I actually think Arizona is the most improved team.
That was my second team. That's who I was tossing up.
I think when you get DeAndre Hopkins, and I just don't think they got worse in any one position. And I think that I don't think that any other team can really say that in the NFC. So I'm going to go with Arizona as my most improved team. And then when it comes to least improved, I'll say Minnesota as well, just because they haven't done enough to really do anything to really qualify. So I'll go with Minnesota. If I had to ask for a second, maybe I'd go with Carolina. But I like what Carolina did with Teddy Bridgewater.
I don't know. Bridgewater's nice though.
Yeah, I do like what they did with Bridgewater, so that's why I'm going to go with Minnesota. But anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning into this 2-hour-long podcast of our NFC breakdowns. You can check our AFC podcast coming out shortly in the next day or two with Sean Green and Nick Geddes. And you can also check out our YouTube channel where we put out today's show with some quick hits on free agency as well. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hitting the Field. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the flip side.